Today would have been Catherine O'Hara's birthday, and I've been thinking about her, not just as a comedy icon, but as someone whose characters never felt cruel. They were big, theatrical, eccentric, but never me. And that made me wonder, is that Catherine's genius? Or is there something about Canadian comedy itself that builds characters differently? This is Culture Alchemy, where we decode pop culture. And today I am so lucky because I have one of the strongest improvisers and character performers working in this country to help me break it down. Nicole Passmore is a Toronto-based improviser, sketch comedian, and actor. She performs regularly with Bad Dog Theatre, is an alum of the Second City National Touring Company and the Sketchersons. And if she looks familiar, you've probably seen her in projects like Netflix's The Umbrella Academy and Murdoch Mysteries. Nicole, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Very excited.
I am too. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the reason why we are here is because, unfortunately, we are here to talk about the death of Catherine O'Hara, who passed away at the time of this recording last month. And I know when I heard it, I felt some kind of way. Like it was as if someone told me someone in my family had died. I was really taken aback. And do you remember where you were when you heard the news? And as someone who, works in comedy.
I was at Comedy Bar and I was working, and I remember just scrolling and seeing someone had posted something she had done and just going like, oh yeah, she's so great. And in the moment it was like, oh yeah, we should just be posting her. It is just a funny video of a person who's incredibly funny. It was that I was watching. And then I saw more posts and finally it clicked and I was like, oh. And I'm not someone who really identifies with celebrity culture. So usually I'm not that affected, but I do agree with you. I was like hurt. I was hurt that this happened. I was sad, which is so funny when it's a person who isn't your family member or your close friend and you're feeling that pain.
Yeah. I mean, you just said it. There was an outpouring, right, of posts and support. And I'm really curious, what do you think that is about Catherine O'Hara?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, she's obviously so talented. And there is this sort of homegrown element, although it was the world over. It wasn't just Canada who was grieving her. And such an interesting question because it isn't just that she's talented. I think it's that her work has spanned such a wide variety that there's so many people who can connect with her. Like I think I just saw a post a few days ago that the dog competition, one of the more famous ones, I can't remember what it's called, but like the Kennel Club did a memoriam for her, a video. And that's incredible, like because her iconic character in Best in Show, or the fact that there's so many places people have seen her, connected with her. And I think that variety really helps people go like, oh, this is a person I have seen something in, I've seen myself in, or I've just been moved by. Whereas, no disrespect to any other celebrities, but when their market, their reach, their appeal, their personality is so much more limited, it's harder to connect with.
Oh, that's so interesting. So it's something about Catherine herself and like what she brings to the characters that you feel people can really relate to. They can see themselves in her work. Oh,
Yeah,
that's so fascinating.
I think so. I mean, and she has so many different characters she's played, and all of them are so unique. So they feel three-dimensional and fleshed out, and yet none of them feel, like you say, like a joke, or like even the most ridiculous ones don't feel like a parody. They feel like a fully fleshed out human. So even from her work, it's like you're seeing a real person.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you said that because we obviously can't talk about Catherine O'Hara without talking about some of her characters, right? And there are so many that we could spend a whole day talking about the genius behind some of the characters she's created. But one of the ones that I think has really just, it sort of brought her a whole new audience, a legion of fans.
Yeah.
We got to talk about the matriarch of the Schitt family from Schitt's Creek, Moira Rose.
Rose, of course.
Moira Rose, right?
Moira Rose, yes. Yeah, of course. I mean, that's such an interesting point. Like it brought I would never say her career was not still in a good place, but it really was a resurgence because it brought her back into the limelight, and especially going from like a Canadian market to being seen on American stations. Like, Schitt's Creek obviously was made here in Canada, but seen all over. I think that was a chance for younger people, for people who weren't familiar before, to get to know her, because there's so many people who already thought she was iconic from SCTV days, but like an incredible show, but not everybody knows what that is. That's sort of niche now. And I actually just read that they're releasing it again on a streaming platform next month. So smart of them. But now there's this new show where she can become iconic again. She's always been iconic, but she can be an iconic performer to a new market, to people who aren't as familiar. And it's an incredible character. Like, it's a wild, specific, incredible character. The joke of like the Moira Rose accent, where it's like, what accent is that? It's nothing and everything. And I think that there's almost no character where you can actually say that that's really the only actor in the world who can do that character, because she invented that voice, that affect, the, pulling fancier words, like a little European world influence, but still this sort of like transatlantic meets Canadian meets wealthy character voice. And it's not just the voice, but I really think it's so unique that like she invented that. She wasn't copying anything. She said, I want to create a character who's completely new, completely distinct. And I think that's what helps make it three-dimensional too. It doesn't feel like mimicking. It feels like creation. It feels like she's made somebody that I'm like, oh, you're neat. You're interesting. You're weird. You're fancy. So I think the character's incredible.
Oh yeah, I actually just did a rewatch last weekend, and it's so funny to see, because the first season you do see that with Moira Rose. You see that. I mean, she is theatrical. She is slightly self-absorbed, right?
Yeah.
She does give unsolicited advice. She does a lot of things that if this person existed in in real life, perhaps she could be extremely polarizing. So
Yeah.
what is it that Catherine brought to this character? Like, why do people love this character so much?
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny when we talk about comedy. It's like, what makes something funny is such an intangible. But again, I think the fact that it isn't. I watched an interview once where she was talking about, oh, I'm playing a rich woman. I don't want to just play another rich woman. And I think that's interesting because like she plays a rich woman in Home Alone. Like, you can't tell me that family's not rich. That's a huge house. And she plays an incredibly wealthy woman in Beetlejuice. And even in Beetlejuice, she plays an incredibly weird, incredibly wealthy woman. And yet it's completely different from Moira Rose. Delia Dietz and Moira Rose are kind of like cut from the same cloth, but very different. And I think there's something really fun about her playing this overly theatrical, dramatic, kind of detached from sort of character, and that you do still see heart and softness, but that they don't try to break her. They don't try to go, suddenly she's the world's most soft woman and she doesn't care about money and she's happy being poor. And I think that there's other shows that would have tried to make a character arc where they do sort of, I don't know, they sort of tame the character in a way. And I kind of love that even to the end, she was still a sort of absurd, strange, haughty, still values the fancier things in life woman. But then you do see the heart. It does come out. So like you do see her love her kids, and you do see moments of her like growing closer to Alexis and being more vocal about that love and affection. But she's not going to suddenly wake up one day and be a character who's like, I love having no money and I'm just going to kiss my kids and hug them and go, like, that would be so strange. So they let her be who she is, and they let her be flawed, I think. And I think there's like so little room for flawed female characters, especially comedic ones. Well, in general, there's so little room for it. So to get to see that where it's like, she is so arrogant and she is walking around being like, I don't like this place, David. And you're like, oh, she's not mean. She's not mean, but she unapologetically owns the fact that she is kind of a snob and she is this like rich, sometimes better than woman. And I love that because I think other places would try to water that down, would try to make her more palatable, would try to change her to make people go like, that's a nice woman. And nice is boring. So to know that she still has softness and heart, but she gets to be this like, it was just like, I want to join your singing group because none of you can sing. And I have a beautiful voice. Like the fact that she's just unapologetically arrogant in some of these moments, I'm like, I love you. I know that's complicated, but yeah, three-dimensionality at its core.
I love that. And you said that of course, she's Delulu, but she's also
100%, yes.
But I remember hearing this as well. You mentioned that she's flawed and we get to see those different sides of her and gives her dimension. And you're right, because even as I'm, watching her, that's something that strikes me about her is the fact that, yes, definitely very, very delusional in some way. The world is her stage. She's kind of living in her world.
Yeah.
But she does get grounded through the fact that she loves her family. She is very vulnerable. And what sticks out to me about that, there is a scene in the first season where, she is talking to Johnny, her husband, and Johnny has to go and he has to like basically he's very ashamed of this too, to go ask for employment insurance. And to your point, at another show, we may have seen a very different reaction from her, but what we see from her is that she actually is emotionally attuned enough to her husband and loves her husband to actually reassure him that, hey, you doing this, you going and asking for this help for the family actually is very masculine. I'm very attracted to it.
Yeah.
And she knows what to say. So she's giving a lot of dimension in that. Yeah, she's real. And I think grounded in something that we can recognize, even if we don't recognize the trappings of the wealth that she always talks about. It's that she loves her family. She loves her kids in her own language. Always one that's
in her own language. I think that's such a great point. She wouldn't, again, suddenly be like, hey, I've always loved you and I will always love you and I'm going to start saying it every minute of every day. Like, that'd be odd. But we see the love. And you're so right. Like, another show would have pitted that character against her husband, probably. And I'm not saying all TV shows do that, but like, it's such a cliche now. It's a trope of like, married couple who hates each other. And we see it all the time in cartoons like, The Simpsons. It's iconic. And it's like, why don't they just leave each other at this point? They are not good to each other. Even people love Modern Family and they're like, Phil and Claire vibes, but like they're kind of mean to each other sometimes and kind of, they don't have each other's backs. And you're so right that in every point throughout that show, like they do support each other. Like she'll have this like wild, theatrical thing she wants to do. And Johnny's like, okay, great, got your back. So to see that kind of support is like, I think rare. I think it's rare. And I think it's so much easier to play into the cliche of like, don't you hate your partner? And instead showing people who are like not sickly sweet, but still show love. I kind of love that. Like,
Me too. Yeah. Me too. We need a lot more of that, right? And I want to pick up on something that I think we're both kind of dancing around. And I do understand that there's something rare, as you said, there's something rare about it. And I think earlier when you said no one else could have played this character. I mean, she made this character. She invented this character.
Yeah.
Right? I think that in of itself makes me want to go back and look at, well, then what is it about Catherine and her training in particular? Because as you mentioned at the top, like, we all know her for a variety of characters, but, obviously, especially for those of us who are from Toronto, we will immediately think about SCTV
100%.
and her second spitting training. Like, as somebody who has also gone through that same training as a performer yourself, what do you think it is about that training that she may or may not have brought to the character? Do you see anything in that training here, homegrown, that
Yeah.
translates while she played Moira?
I mean, I do. One of the like unique things about Second City is that you do create by performing. So, some other methods, you write the sketch and then you perform the sketch and then maybe you tweak it. But with Second City, you have a core idea and then in premise production, in your process, if you're on main stage, especially like you walk out on stage with an idea and then you let the audience inform it because you're not like, oh, I know I'm going to say XYZ line. You're mostly improvising. And she's such an incredible improviser. And one of the biggest things about that is you have to be able to listen to your audience. And I think that's probably the biggest skill is that she learned how to make people laugh. And not a lot of people, weirdly, know how to make an entire crowd laugh earnestly and honestly. Some people are chasing those edgy laughs. Some people are chasing shock laughs. Some people don't recognize when the energy shifts in the audience. And obviously I wasn't there, but I do think one of the benefits of being in a place like Second City is you don't write your sketch and get precious about it. You have an idea and then you say, hey, what are you liking about it? And then you allow things to affect you and to make you better. So I think just being able to listen is such a core skill. And it's not just hearing, it's like having less ego. And she could be a person who could have a lot of ego, but throughout her career, you can see her being so humble and gracious and not getting like too full of herself. So it's an interesting thing because like some of it's magic, some of it's just gotta be, she's such an appealing person, but some of it has to be training. And I was like, oh yeah, I want to like look at her bio. And I didn't know that she was Gilda Radner's understudy, which
Unbelievable,
is
right?
unbelievable in terms of comedy and in terms of women in comedy. Cause like Gilda Radner is incredible, sadly also passed very early, but like, incredible SNL performer, incredible performer in general. And I wonder if there's some effect there too, because they were both so willing to get into character. Like Gilda Radner has a famous quote where she says, be pretty at the party, be ugly on stage. Where it's like, let yourself fully dive into that character. Let yourself be disgusting, ugly, grotesque. Yeah. Let yourself be unlikable because that doesn't make you unlikable. And ironically, the characters are never unlikable because again, it's really hard to hate somebody who's a fully fleshed out, more three-dimensional character because you can see the good, you can see the bad, you can see all of it. It's a lot easier to hate, a one-dimensional, like, I'm the happy girl or I'm the mean, tough girl. Like, there's just not enough going on there. But yeah, knowing that she was Gilda Radner's understudy, I was like, that makes so much sense because they're both so incredible. And the way that I wish I could go back in time and watch them perform together. Like I would kill.
Like, I mean, that's the Mount Rushmore, man, of comedy. So
yes.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up because I was going to bring it up at some point, pepper that in, because that's such an amazing fact to me.
Such a cool detail.
It blows my mind. But thinking about when she was coming up here in Toronto, her brother dated Gilda Radner. So that's how, right? Imagine that your brother brings home this chick and it ends up being Gilda Radner. And then you end up getting introduced to all of the Second City, sort of an SCTV sort of company. She dates Dan Aykroyd. They was like Canadian, like comedic rat pack. Like this is an incredible training ground for anybody just to be around these people. But you can see it, as you said, in like some of her comedy. I definitely see that and the vulnerability that she brings to it. And I think you're right. Like that's what makes it easier to like her, to get behind this rich, snooty sort of like, right?
Because I don't know about you, but I don't love rich people. Like I don't automatically root for the rich person.
Right.
And even in like a situation where they've lost all their money, I'm not like, oh, let's get them their money back. But there's like there's an episode towards the end where it is like they're on their way up in the world. Things have gotten better, and Alexis is so sad about it, and is like, I'm sad that we're not going to see each other anymore. And Moira is like, we're good. Like, but she's being kind, she's being soft, but she's like, no, I think you'll like having privacy back. I think you'll like having money back. And again, another character would have been like, you're right. We don't need money. All we need is love. And the fact that she's like, no, I love you. Love that she doesn't even directly say that, I think, but she's like soft about it. And you can see that she's happy they went through this experience. But at the same time, she is not suddenly a different person. She is still happy to be, at a stable place with money, with success. And again, I'm not rooting for people to be rich. So how did you make me like a rich person and even like the fact that she doesn't want to suddenly not be rich? That she's like, no, I've never really bought in. Like, I've been kind to these people. I've learned from them. I've grown, but I'm not suddenly going to give up my life to live in a small town forever. That I think is incredible. Like the idea of someone sticking to their guns and being able to change just slightly and soften, but not break. I love.
Oh, well said. Soften but not break. And she does do that because over the 6 seasons, and I've seen people on Reddit talking about this, about her very nuanced arc. Because you initially don't think that there's that much happening, but she's doing a lot with that character. And you're absolutely right. She does show a lot of growth. It's just different. It's softer, but also let's keep it real. Like at the end when she's like, yeah, I kind of do want to go back to my life. Like,
bye.
Kind of go. Yeah, exactly. It's like, that's real. Like, that's kind of real, right? So
yes.
I do agree with you on that, and yet that softness you said without breaking, that's something that I'm curious about your thoughts on this, because I actually noticed this as well too. Whenever I watch her, that softness is what I'm saying. I feel, and I'm curious if it's related to being part of an ensemble, because she's a huge character. But to your point, and even the scenes we're talking about, we've both mentioned scenes where she's lifting other people up. So you'll notice, she'll come in with a little quip or just under her breath, just this little soft quip, it just, she never steals us. Like she steals a scene, but that's not her intention. I feel like I can see her training in that. She's used to riffing off others, right?
Yeah, like not to be too cheesy about it, but that is the improviser in her. Like, some people improvise to make themselves look good and they never win. They never are the best on stage because it's really difficult to seem like the best when you're not making other people look great. And here's a person who's like allowing other people to shine and not trying to compete and yet still steals the attention. Like even watching clips, because I watched a movie like ages ago, but I was like, oh yeah, like I want to remember what her character was like in Waiting for Guffman. And such a great movie about like, just, I don't know, like if you do perform, there's so many parts of it that are like, oh, it's a gut punch and it's delightful to watch. But there's so many scenes where she's not saying a word, where she's just in the background essentially. And I am still drawn to her. And it's not like she's trying to steal the focus. She's not trying to pull the energy away. But that ensemble is so helpful. And I think there is a benefit to like the kind of people you come up with and knowing that people like Eugene Levy were kind and we're not sitting here in 2026 hearing horror stories about some of these people. Thank God. Thank God. Like we're hearing horror stories about lots of people in comedy, lots of men in comedy, lots of people in general, but like we're not hearing, the Chevy Chase style, this was a real asshole backstage. They were a bully. Right. We're hearing a person like yeah, in her case, we've never heard anything about her that says she was bad to work with. And we've never heard anything about the people around her. So there definitely seems to be like people who had each other's backs, which is the improv way. Like, there's a quote that's like, make each other look like gold, make your scene partner look like gold, because then you will. And I do think she does that so effectively. There's like this one little clip in Waiting for Guffman where she's like singing with her husband and she just sort of mouths the words he's supposed to be saying, which is such a like classic bad actor move where like you've rehearsed it and you're like mouthing the other person's words. inadvertently. But also, even in that moment, it's like she's so supportive. She's so earnest. She's so like eager and happy for the other character that it's like, it's so funny to me just to see this like little movement of the 3-word line. So like, again, there's nuance, but she's not trying to showboat. And even when she is the biggest character, she's not like constantly stealing the show. Because you can't argue that Moira is a small character. She's big. She's like, I'm positively flummoxed. Like, she's weird as hell. She's big as hell. But it's not like this constant over the top need for attention, which I think is that training. That is, you know, if you're part of an ensemble, you know that it's not always your time to be in the spotlight. You know that you never stop acting. You never stop being in character, even when you're not the focal point. So I think we see this full commitment from her, but without this need or desire to be the star. And then ironically, it makes her the star.
So true. And is that a Canadian thing? That lack of ego. Do you think that's a Canadian thing?
Okay, I'd like to believe it is, but I think that would be like, I don't know. I think like there's range in everything. There's nuance in everything. Nothing's a monolith, of course. But, you know, because like there are some stand-ups and some improvisers who are trying to be darker, meaner, edgier. And I'm not saying there isn't room for comedy that, you know, pushes boundaries. I think there is. I think there has to be. But I do think that like it is comforting in Canada to do shows, you know, even like improv shows, like Catch 23, or I do a weekly show called Nice Time where like, our goal isn't to fuck with people. Our goal isn't to be like, I don't, you know, like we're not trying to alienate. We're trying to draw in. And I do think that most Canadian audiences are like, I just want to laugh. And I don't need that laughter to come from, I don't know, an angry, divisive place. And I again, I really want to clarify. I think there's some Canadian comedians who like can do that really well, but I think audiences can be drawn to that. But I do think when you're talking about improv, which is like the cornerstone of it is to listen to the audience, to build with each other, to say yes to each other. It doesn't all have to be sickly sweet and positive, but it should be a build. And I think that some comedy that roots itself in trying to be divisive, you're trying to break, you're trying to pull apart, you're trying to create cracks. So I would say from my experiences, like, yeah, I've performed for a lot of audiences and a lot of them do just want to laugh, and they're not, the outliers are the ones who want that, you know, like, let's fucking get them. Like, I don't like that. I did work at Second City, like I said, and we used to have this archive sketch. The touring company didn't write it. It was older, but the archive sketch is like 2 Canadians crossing the border and they have oranges. And it's like an American border guard getting very intense with them. And we performed that for months, because when you do an archive sketch, when you do any sketch at Second City, you perform it for months. So you get to see how 100 different audiences respond to it. And so you can learn a lot. And I bring this one up to say that we performed it so often and people were like, oh, that's cute. Haha, that's nice. But we had an American audience in, like we had, I think, like 10 people who had come up from somewhere in America. And during that scene, these American men in the audience kept yelling, get him. Yeah, get him. Like,
wow,
aggressively to
wow.
about the people bringing oranges over the border, which, like, yeah, I'm not saying you should, but in the grand scheme of things, if that's your crime, imagining internally these men were like, yeah, get him. Yeah. Like, where is that coming from? It is a sketch about, you know, a simple mistake. It's not a sketch about hate. Yeah. And yet they've found the most hateful interpretation. No offense. I guess all offense to those angry American men in that one situation. But like, I think most American, I don't know. I think sometimes I get these like American aggressive people, and then sometimes I see just like a Canadian audience in contrast. And they're like, no, we're chill. We're happy to laugh about a couple panicking about a mistake rather than laugh about like, they're going to get detained and they deserve it. Like, that's not where the joke is coming from. So I do think Canadian audiences are happy to laugh at relatability and simplicity rather than let's get too edgy.
Yeah, yeah. And I did read something that Catherine O'Hara herself had said about the difference, the edge,
Yeah.
Canadian comedy and other audiences. She didn't really specify, but other places.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think that's something that you said is like, we're willing to laugh at ourselves.
Yeah.
And there's something about that.
Without getting
Again,
angry about it. Because, like,
yeah.
some other forms of comedy, some American styles of comedy, it's like they can make a joke, but then they're reactive about it. Whereas we can
Right.
play the fool. And maybe that's that kind of
Yes.
underdog effect of Canada, where it's like, hey, we're never going to be in charge. We're never like, we're not a global superpower. I mean, in some ways we are, but we're not really like, in terms of entertainment, I think it's always that bit of the underdog effect where it's like, oh, you can tell it's a Canadian show. Well, they're not going to make it to Hollywood. Like, I think there's something simultaneously infuriating and freeing about knowing we don't have the same limits, because in the US, like, the ceiling is higher. The sky's the limit. There are less opportunities in Canada just by nature of, our funding, our population size, our entertainment star system. So, like, that can be really frustrating. And yet it can also be like, well, fuck it. Like, oh, well, I'm free to do what I want to do, and I don't have to subscribe to other ideals. So I know I'm getting a little lofty here, but I think there maybe is something fun about being Canadians and just being that scrappy little kid sister energy where you're like, I don't know, I'm not held to the same standards, so I have different freedoms and I get to just be weird. I think about that weirdly, actually. Side note with Korean comedy, where I'm like, this is the weirdest comedy and I love it so much. And I feel like they don't care and they don't subscribe to other standards. And they're just like, no, we know who we are and we're a little weird. And I love that.
Oh, that's brilliant. You said as well, too, you get to be that scrappy, underdog. And it's funny because then also thinking about Catherine herself, like being a woman in comedy. And we're going to get to that because I definitely want to ask you about how that might also have impacted how she brought, her own unique blend of humanity to the character. But also she was like the second youngest of like 7 kids. So when you say the scrappy younger sis, she literally was.
Yeah.
That. And I think that's probably helped her as well, too, to have that perspective and understand where the comedy lives in the room, to observe what's happening with other people and know when to step in, know when not to talk. I think there's some training in our own family of origin if you're going to be a comedian. So I'm
100%
really curious.
Yeah.
I mean, since we've been doing this, what's your thought on being a woman in comedy?
Oh my God. I mean, we could talk about this for literally days, months, years. I think, well, I just want to point out, it's funny that, like, statistically, a lot of youngest siblings become comedians. Not all, but, like, statistically, it is notable. Like, a lot of comedians are youngest siblings. And there's something there about, where do you find attention? Like, if you're the youngest of 7, how are you getting that attention? How are you engaging with people? And also a bit of freedom. Like, you're usually not the family member in charge of things. The youngest of 7 probably isn't going to be the one babysitting everybody else. So I think there's something interesting there about how do you stand out in a big family? I'm the youngest of 4, so not quite the same, but even there, it's like, I do relate to that idea of, like, the baby, the clown. Like, I get to sort of have different permissions being the youngest, different freedoms. The question of being a woman in comedy is so big, and how I feel about it is the answer is so big, but I do think it's, like, both difficult and a privilege. Like, sometimes it does feel like audiences are primed to not want to laugh at you. And I'm at a point in my career where, like, that doesn't affect me. I'm like, I'm good. Like, I'm okay. But I think it does happen where, like, we've almost been trained by media to not find women funny, to either find them sexy or a shrew. Like, are they hot or are they mean? And usually like it's hot and mean. But this is, I think, why I'm so obsessed with her being allowed to be these 3-dimensional characters, and not being allowed, but like having given us that gift, because that is what's so much fun as a woman to be able to do, like to challenge what you think I should be doing on stage. And I know men have their own struggles, and I am specifically speaking here of like cis men, but men have their own struggles. I get it. I hear you. I hear you, boys. But like, it is inherently a bit harder to be a woman in comedy. It is harder to prove yourself. Traditionally, comedy is a white boy's game, and like favors white people and favors men. So, any woman trying to get in there, especially at a time that she did, it wouldn't have been easy. People would not have wanted you to succeed as much as they would have wanted other men to succeed. And I still think there's a little of that. I'd like to think it's mostly gone away, but there's still a little of that. Where again, like, I'll see shows where people still will be like, well, I don't think women are funny. Like, you've never met a funny woman ever? Well, I guess you haven't met a woman. I'm so sorry for you. I feel for you. But like, we still hear this rhetoric. Even up until the last like 5 years, there are articles in national magazines and newspapers being like, are women funny? Can you imagine releasing an article that's like, are men even funny? Like, what the hell? How are we still having this discourse? Wow. And I can tell you the answer is yes, absolutely yes. But a coexisting answer is you don't think they're funny because you've been trained not to, because you've been trained to assume that they aren't. You'd have to pull it up, but like, there are literal studies showing that like, we are primed to listen less to women. We are socialized to not think women are funny. So it is harder. But with that, I think it's so much more satisfying to be like, yeah, to quote those American men, got him to laugh. Gotcha. Like, you're mine now. I think it can be so beautiful to be like, you didn't expect the women on this stage to be funny. So I don't know. It's a complicated answer, but I'm so grateful to have a woman like her where she is so funny. And there's so many incredible comedians who are women who do like root their comedy a lot in their own bodies or being a woman. And I don't think that in Catherine O'Hara's work that she's had to do that or needed to do that. And I don't think either is a good or bad thing, but she doesn't have to walk on stage be like, look at my big old titties, which I love. Frankly, I love. Yeah, right. I do that. But she doesn't, her characters never had to like lean into their body. She never had to like talk about just being a woman. She just got to be these women, these interesting, complex, layered women. And so I do think a lot of men especially are like, all women talk about are their boobs and their periods. Like, and we should be allowed, and that should be okay. And like, if that's what a woman wants to talk about, go for it. That can be funny. But again, it's like there's a wall up and there's this assumption of what women do. And that's not true. But I love that there's this incredibly famous woman who went, no, I'm just going to be really funny and really interesting and really complex. And you're going to laugh at it. And hopefully at some point that helps some of these audiences understand like women aren't the hot one. Oh, I'm the sissy one. Which is great. I love that too. But like, why can't you be like, ooh, I'm a sexy little baby who also has a big vocabulary. Like, why can't we be at odds? So I think sometimes I am pretty vocal, pretty loud about feminism. I could be louder, but I piss people off all the time. But I'm like, I don't care. I love the idea that like I don't have to be perfect and I don't have to be sweet all the time. And I think there's something incredible in that she's given us that gift in a small way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you're so right. Like when you talk about that question I asked you about women in comedy being so big, it is. So thank you for indulging me and even trying to, even attempting to answer. That's a whole other show in of itself. You're right. Absolutely right.
But it is such an important thing though. And like, yeah, you can't talk about you can't talk about a woman like Catherine O'Hara without talking about the system. And she is both incredibly talented and lucky. Lucky that she had supportive men around her, supportive people around her. Like her talent would have gotten her anywhere. But like you say, the fact that she got to meet Gilda Radner and got to know like about this world, the fact that this was even communicated to her, that doesn't always happen. You know, I perform and I also teach, and sometimes people are like, I never even knew I could get into this. And there's certain types of people who are like, I especially didn't think this would be open to me. And let me tell you, it isn't like the cishet white men who are like, what? I can do comedy? It's not them. It's, you know, it's a different type of person. It's many different types of people, but it's not them. And I do firmly believe that like you have to see it to know you can be it. And so sometimes, you know, I've had a lot of women be like, wow, like it wasn't until I saw you, and I'm not trying to take credit for these people, but I've had people be like, oh, like you got me started in comedy because I saw you when I was younger. And I was like, whoa, we can do that? Like we're allowed? And it's like, yeah. So to know that like she was that woman for a lot of people. She was the woman who somebody saw and went, holy shit, that's so funny. I want to do that. And that she got that from somebody like Gilda Radner. Like, you're absolutely right. This is the Mount Rushmore. This is like Socrates teaching Plato. This is like, holy hell. Like, I can't believe these incredible people influenced each other, because they're literally two of the most incredible women who have ever existed in comedy. So yeah, it's being a woman in comedy is hard. It's hard. It's easier for me now, but you cannot say it's easy, period. And I'm not trying to discredit anybody else's experience. It's not a competition. But if it is, I'm winning against the cishet white men, that's for sure. But like, it isn't a competition, but it is harder. And I was thinking even like, it's so incredible that she got to be old in comedy. She got to be an old woman in comedy. No, you know, no shade, no shade, no shame, but like she was not young. I wish she had lived many, many more years, but to be in your 60s and 70s still acting and performing and still getting to do comedy, like, again, we rarely get to see funny three-dimensional women, and we rarely get to see three-dimensional, interesting older characters, especially older women. So what a gift to be like, damn, may we all be performing until we're 71, and still being so compelling while we do it. Not being like, I'm old. Like, you know, like still being a fully fleshed out human being on our screens.
Oh, here, Nicole. Here. Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. You know, maybe that's our takeaway for today, because as we are going to wind down, obviously, I do think you're right. I didn't even talk about age. We're talking about so many other, you know, intersections of identity, but you're right. To just be an acting comedian or an acting actor, what's that thing called when you actor? That's it.
Yeah.
Be an actor.
What is that?
It's amazing. To be an actor and to be a woman and to be still bankable, to be still able to book a gig beyond this kind of plateau, this cliff where you're suddenly, maybe it's connected to what you're talking about again, this presumption that, well, if you can't be the hot one, and you can't, like,
what are you offering us that
roles you can do? She created and crafted these characters that, as you said, she could only play those characters, and she brought that humanity. So she was able to stay in the industry for decades and decades. That's an amazing, amazing thing. And so I think maybe that's our takeaway here too, is that you can be big, you can be strange, you can be weird, you can take up space, right? And still be generous. Still be generous.
And if I may, I just want to tell you one last thing. I only met Catherine once. I met her once, very briefly, at Second City, at the old Second City on Blue Jays Way. 99 Blue Jays Way, above the Gretzky restaurant, or beside it, rather, not above. But I met her at the theater. I had gone to see some friends in a main stage show, and she had gone to watch, which, first of all, incredible. An alumni like that going to watch, you know, the new generation of comedy, just going and buying a ticket and, well, I'm sure she got a comp, but going to watch a star in the audience watching My Friends. And then she came out to the lobby, and that lobby in that theater was tiny. Like, it was a really, really tiny bar and then a smallish lobby with photos on the wall, which they still do, but they had, these old classic photos, and she's in a bunch of them. And there was a woman, and I assume her daughter, like, just gushing over the photos, being like, "Oh my God, love Catherine O'Hara, like, just gushing." And she just stood behind them so, like, sweetly, like honestly, just kind of like this, just stood. And I was watching because I was waiting for my friends. So I was like laughing at her, waiting for them to notice her while she was looking at me going like shrugging her shoulders because they didn't notice her. And they they just like spent minutes while she would just patiently, calmly was like, "I'm right behind you," but didn't want to interrupt, wasn't rude, wasn't arrogant, wasn't like, "Hey," again, being like, "Hey, if you'd like to talk to me, I am here making myself available, but I will not steal this moment from you." And then they did notice her, and they walked out the door, and we kind of giggled, and I was like, "Oh," and she's like, "Oh, well." And I was like, "I love your work." And that's like the extent of the interaction we had. And then I walked out, and I kind of like quick stepped up to those people, and I was like, "Hey, Catherine's in there." And they were like, "What?" And like went running back. But again, like, this is the only encounter I've had with her, but from everything I've heard from my friends, she was so generous and still so checked in with Canadian comedy. Not to tell their story, but like, I know people on Baroness von Sketch who she was like in love with because she would watch that show. And again, going to support Second City, even though she's got her own big old career, going back to your old stomping grounds to actually say like, "Hey, I'm going to watch these up and comers, this new generation." I can't imagine many other people that generous with their time and energy, and even generous with their fans and all of it, not in an arrogant, not in an egotistical way. So just my tiny little moment of meeting her. I wish I'd obviously worked with her or had more, but I love that I did at least at one point get to cross paths with her.
Oh, that's a beautiful story. It's a beautiful story because it encapsulates so much of what we were talking about her groundedness, her
Yeah.
just down to earthness, and obviously coming back to where it all began for her. That makes sense that would be sort of like it would be a home for her to come back. Very
Yeah.
natural to come back home
Yeah.
to Second City. And it's like, you can take Second City out of the girl, but you can't take the girl to Second City. It's
Yeah.
always wanting to come back home. I think that's something else that I really appreciate about her too, is that she has had so much success abroad, as you said earlier. Even most recently in the studio, her work is phenomenal in that show as well too. She just disappears into these characters, and I just don't think about any other character that she's played when she's in character. It's like she becomes them. But at the same time, she always reps for Canada, always reps for Toronto, always reps for her, essentially the place that made her. And I think it's just been such a lovely opportunity to just talk about her, what makes her so great, her contribution to comedy. And I want to thank you so much for sharing just that little piece as well too, and so much of your time. And really, honestly, I think it's beautiful to have somebody who does have a real root in the Canadian comedy scene right now, can appreciate like how much of, honestly, like, pioneer she was. She
Yes,
really was.
hugely. Yes, yes. It's a great
Oh,
word for it.
such a
Yeah.
time. She really is.
So many of
And
us couldn't be here without what she's done. Like,
yeah,
we just wouldn't have careers without her.
yeah. She opened the door. She opened the door, and when it was ajar, she walked through, and she showed people what it means to be a woman and to be funny. Believe it or not, to be
Believe it or not, it's possible,
it
despite
is.
what the think pieces argue.
Well, listen, no one can debate that you are also extremely funny, Nicole. And if anybody wants to see you perform, if they happen to be in the Toronto area, can you tell us, what do you have going on? What are you up to these days?
Sure. Yeah. Every Wednesday at Comedy Bar Bloor, I have a show called Nice Time. It's an improv show. Super funny. Truly always an incredible cast. Just a nice time. So come on out. I also often perform in Catch-22. I would love to shout out my friend's show, Monster Island, which I perform in regularly, but it's a solo character sketch show. So, really plays into that world of character. Yeah, there's a ton happening, but come to Nice Time because it's the best show in town. I promise. But those other ones are great. And genuinely just go see comedy because there's so much incredible stuff happening. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, Nicole, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure. And I do want to say I have seen you perform. I can definitely vouch for the fact that, you're definitely someone that.
You. Good.
Phenomenal.
Someone at home listening.
Oh, I didn't know she was funny.
I love a vouch.
No.
Love a vouch.
She's funny. So go see her. Go see her. Okay. Alchemist, thank you for joining us today as well. If you haven't already, like and subscribe so you can decode more pop culture with me and guest every week. I'm Nicole Passmore. Thank you so much for joining me. Until next time, Alchemist, stay curious.